A promise made in the crushing dark of the deepest ocean trench. A wish granted for an impossible price. For one young woman, the chance to walk on land was a dream she'd pay anything for. But some bargains are written in salt and sorrow, and the sea always collects its debts. This is the story of a life bartered, a love that was forbidden, and a single choice that would shatter two worlds. A former mermaid gets one chance at a human life, but it comes with a cruel condition. She can never use her powers again. When the prince she has sworn to protect is cursed by a tormenting spirit, she finds out she's the only one who can save him. To free him, she has to break her vow and use her forbidden magic, even if it means losing him and her human life forever. Chapter 1. A Life on Borrowed Legs. On land, her name was Mira. It was a simple human name, chosen for its softness. A sharp contrast to the musical, hissing sounds of her true people. She'd repeat it to herself every morning, a ritual to ground her in a world that felt alien and off balance. Before she was Mira, she was a daughter of the sea, a creature of tide and current. Now, she was just a palace maid, her world shrunk to stone corridors and the suffocating rules of courtly life. She'd struck the pact with Mira, the ancient goddess of the oceans, a being as fickle as a summer storm and as unyielding as the abyss. Mira begged for a human life, for a chance to see the sun and feel solid ground. Mira, in what seemed like a moment of cruel fun, granted it, but the cost was absolute. Mira's voice, which once held the power to soothe churning waters, was now merely human pleasant but powerless. Her connection to the sea was severed, and the final, most important rule: she was never to use her innate abilities. No songs of power, no command over water. If she ever let her true nature slip, the pact would be broken. She'd be dragged back to the sea, stripped of her human form and memories, and doomed to an eternity in the cold, silent dark. Her new life was a lesson in pain. The legs Mira gave her were a masterpiece of divine cruelty. Every step felt like walking on sharp knives, a constant, agonizing reminder of her sacrifice. It made her clumsy, a liability in the fast-paced palace. She spilled wine, dropped laundry, and stumbled on the grand staircases. Ilara, the head maid, a woman with a face perpetually pinched in disapproval, saw her as just some bumbling country girl who'd somehow lucked into a job. This constant pain was Mira's penance, but it was also her shield. It kept her grounded in her humanity. And it was this very clumsiness that first brought her to Prince Alaric. During a royal banquet, her ankle twisted, sending a tray of crystal goblets crashing to the floor. As nobles gasped, one voice cut through the noise. "Are you all right?" It was him. Prince Alaric. He wasn't what the stories made him out to be. The whispers called him the Mad Prince, prone to fits of rage, melancholy, and strange illnesses. They said he was cursed, or just weak-minded. But the man who stood before her, offering a hand to help her up, had eyes filled not with madness, but with a profound, soul-deep exhaustion. He was handsome, but in a haunted way, like a man always waiting for the next blow to fall. He helped her up, ignored the glares from the high table, and with a quiet word, dismissed the furious head maid. That small act of kindness was the first thread in a tapestry that would soon bind their fates together. Chapter 2. The Shadow in the Room. Through a strange series of events, Mira found herself reassigned to the prince's private wing. The other servants thought it was a grim assignment. They spoke in hushed tones about the prince's erratic behavior, his sleepless nights, and his arguments with people who weren't there. They were afraid of him, of the oppressive sadness that clung to his chambers like a shroud. Mira, though, wasn't afraid. She was curious. On her third day, while turning down his bed, she saw it. At first, it was just a shimmer in the air near the rain-streaked window, like heat rising from pavement. But as she stared, her eyes that had spent a lifetime piercing the gloom of the ocean depths, saw the shape. It was a girl, or the ghost of one. She was translucent, flickering like a candle flame, her hair floating as if she were underwater. Her dress was from another era, and phantom water seemed to drip from its hem onto the rug, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. The spirit ignored Mira. Its attention was locked on Prince Alaric. It drifted towards him, its lips moving, whispering words that made no sound. Yet, Alaric flinched, as if he'd been struck. "Leave me be," he rasped, pressing his palms to his temples. The spirit laughed, a silent, chilling gesture that made the air grow cold. Its torment wasn't about big, terrifying attacks. It was a slow, insidious poison. It was a creature of misery, feeding on his despair. Mira watched it subtly move a book he was reaching for, making him question his senses. She saw it trace a crack in the ceiling, and then heard Alaric suddenly start talking about how the castle was about to collapse. This was the source of his madness. He wasn't losing his mind. He was being systematically dismantled by an entity no one else could see. This ghost was a spectre born of water, like the Nixies and Undines from folklore spirits who haunted humans, often driving them mad. Mira realized with a jolt that her own aquatic nature was why she could see it. It wasn't a power she was actively using. It was a passive sense, a leftover part of her being, like a sailor who can smell a storm on the wind. She was a creature of the water, and so was this spirit. They spoke the same silent, supernatural language. To confirm her terrifying suspicion, she tested her theory. "Your Highness, do you feel the chill?" she asked one afternoon, as the spirit hovered near the hearth, draining the fire of its warmth. Alaric just nodded, wrapping his arms around himself. But when Mira asked another servant the same question, the boy just looked at her, confused. "Chill, miss. It's quite warm in here." The horrible truth settled in. She was the only one, the only person who could see the real cause of the prince's suffering. Everyone else saw a man going insane. His father, the king, saw a political problem. The doctors saw a case of untreatable melancholia. But Mira saw a man under siege, fighting a war on a battlefield no one else knew existed. And she, the powerless mermaid, the clumsy maid, was his only potential ally. Chapter 3. A Silent Plea. As the weeks passed, Prince Alaric's condition got dramatically worse. The spirit, who Mira now thought of as Lyra, grew bolder. During a meeting with the royal council, Alaric suddenly screamed, clawing at his throat as if he were choking on water. He suffered violent convulsions that left him weak and breathless, his eyes wide with a terror no one else could understand. The king was desperate. He brought in physicians, holy men, and mystics. None of it worked. Lyra would just retreat with a smug, translucent smirk, only to return with even more fury once the experts had left. The diagnosis was always the same: a deep-seated madness, a flaw in the royal bloodline. The court started to treat him as a lost cause. Mira couldn't just stand by and watch him be destroyed. Her heart ached for the kind man who had offered her a hand when she was at her lowest. She had to do something, but her vow was a shackle. Any use of her true power, and she'd be forfeit. So, she tried to fight a magical problem with non-magical solutions. First, she tried folklore. She knew that certain salts and seaweeds were poison to lesser water sprites. She used her meager wages to bribe a sailor at the port, describing exactly what she needed. She ground the salts into a powder and wove the seaweed into a sachet, placing it under the prince's mattress. That night, for the first time in months, Alaric slept soundly. A small victory. But it was short-lived. Lyra returned the next evening, crackling with rage. She tore the sachet apart with invisible fury, and that night, the prince's nightmares were worse than ever. Her second attempt was more dangerous. Communication. Mermaid folklore is full of tales about spirits who aren't truly evil, but are bound by sorrow. If she could learn Lyra's story, maybe she could appease her without magic. Waiting until Alaric was in a deep sleep, Mira stood in the center of his chambers. "I know you are here," she whispered. "I can see you." For the first time, the spirit turned its full attention to her. It drifted closer, its eyes wide with shock. Drawing on a deep well of empathy, Mira didn't project power, but sorrow. She thought of her own loss, the ocean, her family, her home. She projected her own loneliness, her own pain of being trapped between two worlds. It was enough. A flicker of understanding crossed the spirit's face. Slowly, images and feelings flooded Mira's mind. Lyra had been a nixie, a freshwater spirit bound to the spring that fed the castle's wells. Generations ago, one of Alaric's ancestors, a prince just like him, had discovered her. He courted her, promised her everything, then cast her aside to marry a human princess. Heartbroken and betrayed, her love curdled into an undying hatred for the bloodline that had wronged her. It was the curse of the spurned undine, straight from the old myths. Mira pleaded with her. "He isn't the man who hurt you. Let him go. Let yourself be free." But Lyra's spectral face twisted in rage. She saw Mira not as an ally, but as a rival. Another creature of water, foolishly throwing her existence away for a human. "You will suffer as I did." The feeling washed over Mira, cold and sharp. "I will make him destroy you before I destroy him." The truce was over. Chapter 4. The Prince's Trust. The conflict escalated. Lyra now saw Mira as a threat and started trying to expose her. She'd knock over buckets of water, hoping to see a flicker of magic. She'd whisper taunts only Mira could hear, speaking of the cold, crushing dark of the sea, trying to trigger a primal fear. The prince's chambers became a silent war zone. The breaking point came on a stormy night. Lyra, energized by the tempest, shrieked in Alaric's ear. In a fit of agony, the prince hurled a heavy silver candlestick toward the source of the voice. But his aim was off. Just before it hit a large mirror, Lyra's form materialized and, with pure spite, redirected the projectile. It flew straight at Mira. Mira had no time to think. She threw herself to the side as the heavy object whizzed past her head and shattered a window. She landed hard, the familiar pain in her legs flaring. But when she looked up, she saw Alaric staring, not at the shattered window, but at the empty space where the spirit had been. He hadn't seen Lyra, but he had seen the candlestick change direction in mid-air, and he'd seen Mira dodge an object she couldn't have possibly seen coming. He rushed to her side, his eyes wild with confusion and a fragile hope. "You saw it, didn't you? Something was there." He grabbed her arms. "All this time. Everyone thinks I'm mad. But you see it. Who are you talking to when you think I'm asleep?" The lie died on her lips. "There is a presence here, Your Highness," she said, her voice steady. "A spirit, a deeply sorrowful one. It was betrayed long ago by one of your ancestors. Its pain has turned to poison, and it pours that poison into you." Relief washed over Alaric's face, so intensely he sank to the floor in front of her. For months, he'd been drowning alone. Now, Someone had just thrown him a rope. She was the first person to validate his reality. In that moment, he trusted her completely. Their dynamic shifted. They became co-conspirators in a secret war. By day, she was his maid. By night, his strategist. He'd tell her what Lyra whispered, and she, drawing on mermaid lore and castle library books, would devise countermeasures. They hung iron chimes, traced patterns with salt, and burned rowan wood. These were small, human defenses, and while they didn't defeat Lyra, they created brief respites from the torment. In these quiet moments, something new began to grow between them. He stopped seeing a clumsy maid and started seeing a woman of incredible strength. She stopped seeing a cursed prince and started seeing the kind, compassionate man trapped beneath the curse. It was a dangerous, impossible affection. A love story echoing the tragic fairy tale of a mermaid who falls for a prince she can never truly have. And both of them knew, deep down, it couldn't last. We're at the heart of the storm now. The prince finally has an ally, but the spirit's power is growing. What do you think Mira should do? Stick to her plan of using human remedies, or risk it all and confront Lyra with the power she's forbidden to use? Let me know what you think down below. And if you're loving this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the climax is coming.